Our Region's Business is sponsored by PNC for the Achiever in you. Now, here's your host, Bill Flanagan.
Today on Our Region's Business, nurturing the innovation economy outside our region's urban core. We'll visit the East Center at Linden Point, the new business incubator in Hermitage. Plus, Rand Corporation's ever-deepening roots in our region. We'll meet the new CEO of the Pittsburgh office. But first, from the portal to the Pacific to the Paris of Appalachia, as Geekwire put it, the national technology news site has set up shop in our region for the month of February. Inspired by Amazon's ongoing search for an HQ2, Geekwire decided to establish a temporary HQ2 of its own in another up-and-coming tech city, which turned out to be Pittsburgh. Todd Bishop is a temporary resident of our region and the co-founder of Geekwire.com. Welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so for folks who don't know Geekwire, a little bit about the company and what you do out there in Seattle.
Absolutely. We are a national technology news site that looks at the world of tech through a Pacific Northwest and Seattle lens. My colleague John Cook and I were longtime newspaper reporters. The paper where we worked shut down. We started our own venture, and this is it. We're up to about 15 people total. We cover technology like traditional journalists, but in the era of digital and innovation.
Well, really, I would imagine you have your hands full in the Pacific Northwest and in Seattle, given everything that's happening there. So what you doing here in Pittsburgh?
We decided, as you said, in part to spoof Amazon's HQ2, but we're being very serious about it. We put out our own RFP, and we like to do things that are called Geekwire adventures, and that's everything from having one of our reporters deliver Amazon packages for a weekend and then write about it, or do a multimodal transportation race across Seattle. Our HQ2 search is essentially the ultimate Geekwire adventure. We put out an RFP, received bids from around the country, and we chose Pittsburgh to establish a temporary headquarters for the month of February.
And you're bringing people in and out of town for the whole month to cover all these tech stories here in Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. Everything from a visit that I made to Trinity Cathedral downtown to talk with them about the implications of the potential arrival of Amazon, to the robotics, to artificial intelligence. We had our first ride in an Uber self-driving car, which was eventful.
I read that account. Yeah, you all emerged a little bit skeptical about just how rapidly we're all going to be driving around in self-driving cars.
I don't think they're ready for Pittsburgh's potholes yet.
Well, so you are finding enough stories here to keep everybody busy?
I will tell you, candidly, the biggest challenge we're having is that the volume of good stories to tell in Pittsburgh cannot be told in a month, and we're sitting here trying to triage, frankly, at a level that we're not in Seattle, and that's one interesting difference that we're seeing. Whereas in Seattle, you're seeing a lot of influence from Microsoft and Amazon and these big tech companies that are clearly creating a lot of gravity and significance in the tech scene, and you do have more venture capital and, frankly, a larger volume of startups. One of Pittsburgh's strengths that we've seen is simply the sheer level of innovation in a lot of these areas that are really going to redefine the future economy. Artificial intelligence, robotics, everything that all of you know here in Pittsburgh. These are things that are important to people around the world, and they're happening here.
Well, it's interesting. Well, we always like to think Pittsburgh always plays above its weight. It's good to hear that in this respect it's still happening. And are you from the West Coast?
I am. I grew up in California.
Okay.
Spent a lot of time in Philadelphia. My first job was at the Inquirer as
wow. So you
apprentice.
know Pennsylvania, you know this part of the country. But any sort of personal observations about being here, and especially compared to Seattle?
Absolutely. And I think this is actually something very important to consider as Pittsburgh is making the bid for Amazon's HQ2. The culture here, in my assessment, is much more Midwest than East Coast, and frankly much more warm and friendly and open than Seattle and the West Coast. I think Amazon has in its RFP put out a version of itself that it is looking to work with communities wherever it ends up putting HQ2. Our perspective on Amazon as people in their backyard is that they are actually a very closed off and secretive company. And it's quite possible that they are going to change that characteristic when they go to wherever HQ2 lands up. But if they stay true to what we've known about Amazon, I think there could be a bit of a culture clash where you have a company that might not actually be ready to work with a community that's as open as Pittsburgh is.
Well, in Pittsburgh, we're known for 75 years probably for collaboration. Fascinating that you think that kind of partnership may not necessarily be in their DNA.
Seattle's leaders and Amazon are only now just starting to talk about the future because Seattle was spooked by what Amazon did in terms of looking for a second headquarters. In fact, this week they're having one of their first meetings to talk about the future. And this is after 10 years of growth from just a few thousand employees in Seattle to more than 40,000. I mean, it's a remarkable story, and I really think the people in Pittsburgh and everywhere else that's bidding for Amazon's HQ2 need to look at what's actually happening in Seattle to understand what could happen in their communities.
Yeah, well, and there is. I mean, what you know, and hopefully we're one of 20. You know, I mean, hopefully Amazon.
I think you have a shot.
Us.
I think you have a shot. It's a long shot. Well, okay. It's a long shot, but I could give you a litany of non-RFP reasons that Pittsburgh has a shot at HQ2. Amazon loves to hire FedEx Ground employees.
Oh, geez, because FedEx Ground's going to love to hear that.
Just last week, Amazon announced their new healthcare venture with JP Morgan Chase and Berkshire Hathaway. You know, I don't have to tell you what's going on in Pittsburgh with that. Jeff Wilke, the *2 at Amazon, the CEO of their consumer business, he's a Pittsburgher. I think there are a lot of intangible reasons that Amazon could end up here. I do think it is a long shot.
Okay, well, it would be exciting if it were to happen. One thing we should be thinking about if it were to happen.
Oh my gosh. Get it in writing. Make sure that they don't Uber you.
Okay. All right. I love that advice. We can all continue to follow Geekwire for the balance of the month. Hopefully we'll continue to follow it long after you've left Pittsburgh, but at least through the end of the month, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Geekwire.com. Todd Bishop, co-founder. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your stay in Pittsburgh.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah. Next up, there's no reason geeks should gravitate only to urban areas. We'll see how Hermitage in Mercer County is pursuing a tech startup strategy to remake a more rural economy and bringing lessons learned to Pittsburgh itself. Stay with us.